I'm Janice Edwards. Coming up on Signature Silicon Valley, EMQ Families First helps those in need, and especially at this time of year, it's important to know about their services. Then guess who's turning 5? We are. Signature Silicon Valley is celebrating a milestone. We'll look back at some of the fun we've had. And an incredible teen who started a nonprofit at the age of 8 joins us, Helen Casa. That's all coming up next. Join us. Hi, I'm Janice Edwards, and this is Signature Silicon Valley. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin our show today focusing on EMQ Families First, because when people are in need, the services there can make a life-altering difference. Don Taylor is the Senior Clinical Director, and we're glad to have you join us to talk about the services that you provide. And you've been with EMQ for 17 years.
17 years now.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's an incredible agency. Yep.
Yeah. And the name, some people are not clear on how EMQ came about.
So EMQ Families First. The EMQ is from Eastfield and then Ming Kwong. So we've been in Santa Clara County for almost 150 years now. So those were two organizations way back when in the 1800s that started and ultimately merged together.
And providing such incredible services. I had a client of yours here before who talked about how she'd had help with both getting over drug addiction as well as cutting. And you offer so many comprehensive services to really help people take their lives in a new direction. Can you go through just some of those umbrella services that you provide?
Sure. So overall, we have services all over California, a wide variety. In Santa Clara County, we're 15 different types of services, everything ranging from prevention services at the very end, going into schools, doing presentations to classrooms, and we also do community-based services out in the homes, and then also some residential services as well, and then crisis services.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to have you at this time of year is because going back to school is many times a stressor. So when you're in the classroom with preventive services, what kind of information are you sharing with students?
So we're doing a number of things. So when we're in the classrooms, we're talking a lot about triggers that the students may experience in the classrooms.
Now, what's a trigger for people who don't know?
Yeah, so triggers might be anything from the pressure of coming back to school, being back with friends or trying to make friends, to just adjusting their schedules from the summertime being in the home to something that may be as simple as getting up early and adjusting the schedule, which can be tough for some of the kids who are experiencing some of their mental health challenges.
Right, and these days, one of the things that just makes high school so much harder, or school in general, but social media and bullying, and that's a trigger, as we know, even sometimes tragically, for suicide. What kind of tools do you offer students to help them cope if they're picked on by mean kids?
Yeah, so that unfortunately happens a lot, and our continuum of crisis services, particularly, are focusing a lot on helping the kids who have been bullied to the extent that they're feeling a lot of pressure and just really don't know what to do with it right now, and acting out a bit with some significant behaviors. We'll go out to schools and talk directly with those kids, do some assessments, and really help evaluate them to get them to a place where they can be safe. So that's with our crisis services.
And then that means be safe would mean they talk to a counselor? Or
yeah, everything ranging from talking to a counselor, setting them up with more extensive services. A lot of the services, along with classrooms, we do in the home too. So sometimes they need support with their parents and figuring out how to interact and work with their parents.
So that's great. So then would it be a teacher that would contact EMQ Families First on behalf of a student, and then you might have to have the delicate dance of going into the home to deal with issues there as well?
We're fortunate enough with our size, we get a full range of referrals from teachers, from social workers, from parents themselves. so we really, those adults that see the need first are the ones outreaching to us.
Right. And for some people, just the thought of opening up, especially in different cultures, is very challenging. How do you help people become comfortable with the idea that talking about the problem can really be the first step toward transforming it?
So that's a great question. One of the things we train our staff to do, and we really focus on, is really starting with family strength. So some people may have heard the term strength-based, which really means understanding the family in the context of their own culture, what happens at home, what they do well, what they naturally do. And by doing that, that's the very first thing. We hear their story, understand that, and that tends to set the stage for us to be able to really understand the things that aren't working as well. So we build on the things that are working.
Yeah. For families who've been hit hard by the changes in the economy, what kind of services or support do you offer?
We have comprehensive services, and part of what we offer is an approach that covers a number of different areas. So while the referrals are made with mental health issues in mind, what we know is that mental health issues can be exacerbated by other needs, whether it's financial, economic, job status with parents, stressors in the neighborhood. So when we're working with families, we take a comprehensive approach and develop a pretty comprehensive plan with them that hits all the different life areas to really try to help them.
So someone who might be watching and hopefully will want to reach out might have the concern about the finances too. What can you offer those people who aren't sure they'd be able to afford your services?
We connect with a lot of our partners out in the community with that, and a majority of our services are for low-income families. We get a lot of our referrals through the county, and Medi-Cal is, those who have Medi-Cal definitely get our services.
That's wonderful. You've done this work for a long time, and sometimes people talk about compassion fatigue and burnout. What do you do to keep yourself excited about it? Because I know as we were talking about the services and the work, your eyes lit up.
It's so compassion fatigue, we've been talking about that, of course, in our agency. And one of the things that has come up recently that's been pretty enlightening to me is that one of the number one things for workers like myself is to see success along the way. And fortunately, our agency is always fairly successful. We benchmark ourselves against state and national standards, and we're typically higher, about 10 to 20% higher than state and national standards. And for any individual worker who's working with families to see that success, it makes the world a difference. The fatigue goes away, the excitement comes back, and to continue to do that with families.
Yes. You know, a lot of times when someone is diagnosed, is using drugs or has an alcohol problem, people don't think of that as a mental health issue, but usually, most times they're trying to self-medicate to regulate a brain chemistry problem.
And so we very much focus on complex care. In previous years, very much it was kind of separated. You have mental health and addiction prevention and other type of needs out there, and really the way our services are heading toward is a much more comprehensive, holistic approach. So we're working with addiction issues, working with mental health issues under the umbrella of behavioral health. So that's actually it's exciting for us. We're developing those competencies every year more and more, and we're seeing the families benefit.
Yes, well, it's wonderful that you have the services that you do, and now that we've talked about it, we really want to encourage you, if you think you might be able to avail yourself of the services and it might make a difference for you or someone you know, we want to encourage you to make that phone call, because sometimes that first phone call is a hard one to make, but on the other side of it, there'll be so much relief and support for what you're dealing with. So the details are on our screen. Here's how to contact EMQ Families First, and they are throughout California as well. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we are celebrating a milestone of our own this year, 5 years of Signature Silicon Valley. So we have to say thank you so very much for putting your signature on the Valley and joining us to celebrate all that you do. Here are some of our great memories that we've shared. San Francisco 49er Vernon Davis is opening his art gallery right here at Santana Row. Lots of art and a wonderful evening that complements two of Vernon Davis's passion, his love of the arts and his philanthropic desires. Who encouraged you when you were growing up that helped you make this dream come true as well as that of being a 49er?
My grandmother, Adeline Davis. She's back in D.C. right now. She don't fly. I wish she can come here and see this, but maybe someday we'll put her on the train while she's asleep. This is all about the foundation. You know, it's not about me at all. And I get excited just thinking about some of the things that I plan on doing in the near future. That's what makes me excited mostly.
How did your trip to Paris inspire you in terms of the artwork?
Between the 2-hour wait to see the Mona Lisa and the rest of the Louvre, but it was nice. It really inspired me. It inspired me to go even further, you know, with the art and, you know, just helping kids and helping people.
We're talking with Garth Brooks and Tricia Yearwood, who've been working all morning here at this home. And you mentioned that earlier this morning you had a chance to see the homeowner when she said prayers for the home. That was a very touching moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it really is all about. When you see that, you know, the homeowner and that they are emotional and appreciative, it makes you just work all the harder. And they're working right alongside you. I mean, she was in there laying tile in her bathroom, you know. So every time she walks in that room, she'll go, "I did that." You know, it's a great sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, there's also when you do this, there's also I don't even know what the right word for appreciativeness is. But it's neat to see the homeowner being very thankful all the time and very sweet. And this little gal here, man, she's broke down 2 or 3 times a day already, just crying. And I got to tell you, if I was in her shoes, I would too. I'm trying not to right now. You know, it's fantastic.
We are on location at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation in the office of Dr. Emmett Carson, CEO and President. Normally he joins us in studio, but today we are on location with him. And great to see you again, and congratulations. I know that one of your recent initiatives was very successful. Want to share more about that one?
Well, thank you for being here. Silicon Valley Gives was a major success for our community. It involved supporting nonprofits in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. We raised over $8 million in a 24-hour period, and over 14,800 people participated. So it was just phenomenal.
That is incredible, and it's so wonderful that so many nonprofits will benefit in that way. Now, these nonprofits were the ones to which you traditionally give, as well as others, correct?
Absolutely. Any nonprofit in the 2 counties was eligible to participate.
Are you seeing the increase in terms of nonprofit needs at this time?
We are. You know, our community is a tale of really 2 cities. On the one hand, for some in our community, things have never been better. For others in our community, things have never been more difficult. The transportation challenges, the housing challenges, our educational system isn't what it should be. So across the spectrum, there are growing problems, and obviously the nonprofit sector is there to try to help address some of those problems.
Welcome back. Nice to have you with us again.
Hi, Janice. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and thank you for bringing something that is filling our studio with such a delicious aroma. Tell us about these stuffed baked artichokes, Grandma Rose Cortese style.
Well, you know, my grandma passed away years ago, but she used to make these all the time. And as a kid and a young man, you know, it was a great delight to come to a family holiday party and walk in and see these on the stovetop.
Yes.
I knew it was going to be a good day, but later, nobody knew how to make them. You know, the recipe was lost, was never written down. She just made them, you know. And she was a first-generation immigrant from Sicily, as was my paternal grandfather. So I started experimenting, trying to figure out how to reconstruct, you know, what I knew. It was almost like trying to play music by ear, because I knew what they were like, you know.
And what they tasted like, that right taste.
Right, so after several false starts, I finally came up with the recipe, and then quickly shared it with other members of the family to make sure I had done it, you know. And everybody said, you nailed it, this is it. So,
welcome to you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm almost as happy as the Japino.
Yes, and it smells wonderful. Everyone in the studio is just savoring the smell of it. I wanted to have an opportunity to talk with you in a more personal way, just about your life and what led you into politics, and also this recipe in your family. So,
Yes.
so since it's before us and we started with that, talk to me a little bit about Cioppino, why you like it and who made it at home.
Right. So crab Cioppino is a traditional Sicilian dish, although it's enjoyed elsewhere in Italy. It's often enjoyed on Christmas Eve. So it's a big family meal. This is something you make a big deal about. And Cioppino is really just a collection of fish and in a rich tomato sauce with with a lot of spices, a lot of garlic. And for the most part, it's about whatever anybody brings to the kitchen that day. Usually, different uncles and aunts and cousins would bring, their favorite shrimp or crab or whatever it was, and it all gets thrown into the same pot. And the family enjoys whatever's there. So my mom made it for us since I was a little kid. It was always a favorite of mine. My mom is not Italian, by the way. She's Irish and Mexican and lots of other nationalities. But she decided she couldn't stand Irish food, and so she learned how to cook Italian from my paternal grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We were talking with Sal Pizarro earlier in our show about Christmas in July. So what is your favorite part of this event?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny, but they do a great little fundraiser thing here called Heads or Tails, where they keep flipping cards and seeing who ends up winning, and it's just a fun thing. It's a 50-50 kind of thing. But, of course, that's fun for me because I like to win things.
I invited Carl Ray to join us. He is an author and a performer who has written the book Cured, The Power of Forgiveness. And when Carl was a young boy, he witnessed his father being killed right before his eyes.
Daddy told him I was going away to college. Bill reached in his pocket, pulled out a gun, struck Daddy across the forehead. I hit Bill across the head with a Clorox ball. The three of us tumbled off the porch. As we held on to Bill, he raised his hand with the gun and cocked it, reached over, shot Dad in the chest 8 times. It happened that quick.
Carl, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this in context, because one of the things that you have shared is that your father's death at an early age shaped your entire life. And you at one point had to seek help and made a decision about what kind of career you would have based on this incident. So let's talk a little bit about what happened when you were a teenager that led to your father's death.
Okay, it was 1961, and I grew up in a little town called Butler, Alabama. And that afternoon, I said yes and no to a white man. In those days, that was considered disrespectful.
You didn't say yes, sir, and no, sir.
I didn't say yes, sir, and no, sir.
I'm Janice Edwards. We wanted to leave you with just a little extra today. We're on location downtown San Jose for the Christmas in the Park opening. In just a moment, Santa will arrive, the tree will be lit, and the official holiday celebration will begin.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Light it up. There we go.
You know, one of the things that you have been focusing upon in Silicon Valley is having diversity and really inclusion become a part of not only conversation, but action at the tech companies. How did this particular thrust begin?
Well, it began maybe even 15 years ago. At that time, David Drummond from Google had just done the incorporation papers for Google. It was a very young company at that time. At that time, John Thompson, who is now the chair of the board of Microsoft, was sitting in Symantec in Silicon Valley. We were trying to work our way through what we saw as patterns of discrimination for women and people of color, which happens to be combined the majority market. And then, of course, the recession hit, and a lot of the focus shifted to the Barack Obama campaign for the presidency. And so while we remained involved, not as involved as we are now. And what we found when we looked is that the 20 top companies, 189 board members, 36 women, 3 African Americans, 1 Latino. Our index of consumption is much higher than that.
Tyco lesson, and I'm very excited about that. But before we start that, I do want to mention that not only has Tyco led to so many incredible performances, but there's a little romance that it helped foster, because Weeza and Franco are husband and wife, and they have a little one who may be a Tyco drummer one day. Next generation, yes.
Okay. So, re. Nice. Now left hand. So switch. Okay. So, re. Okay, now we're going to alternate right and left, and we're going to get a little bit faster until we get to a drum roll.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Right hand up.
Okay.
So, re, hop, left, hop, hop, left, and right, and left, faster, right, and left, and right, left, right, left.
And we always want to hear from you, so if you'd like to contact us here at Signature Silicon Valley, the details are there on our screen. Helen Casa is a high school senior, but she has already racked up so many credits and impressive credentials that people twice her age are envious, and even beyond twice her age, but we'll only go twice her age. Anyway, Helen, it's wonderful to see you. I had mentioned at the top of the show that at the age of 8, you started a nonprofit organization. So let's go back there and then move forward in your impressive career. What inspired you to start a nonprofit at the age of 8? Tell me about it, etc.
So I would say that the biggest thing was the death of my grandmother. So I always say that the end of my grandmother's life was the beginning of my own. And I say that because one of the things that she taught me when she was alive was education is important, giving back to your people is important, and number 3 is always staying humble. So when she passed, we went to Ethiopia, and on my trip, my mom and my uncle took me out, and while we were driving, we were stuck at a red light, there were kids around my age at the time, 6, 7, 8 years old, knocking on the car windows selling gum and candy. I was kind of thinking, hey, are these the bad kids? Are they ditching? Are they just trying to get a couple bucks? Because,
why
here,
aren't they in school?
Exactly, because here everybody goes to school. If you're not in school, it's kind of like, what are you doing? So my mom kind of gave me a serious look, and she told me, Helen, these are the breadwinners of the family. And when I heard that, I initially and instantly thought of my grandmother and what she always taught me, that education is important, and these kids were obviously not being educated, and giving back to your people is important. So I felt that it was my job or to do something about it, because I was really upset and unhappy about it. So I told my mom and my uncle, hey, I really want to do something, and they laughed because they thought it was sweet and cute, but they really saw the passion and the pain in my eyes, and we went and we followed through. So when we went back to California, San Jose, where I grew up, we started fundraising money for my first project.
Right, which was providing supplies.
Yeah.
For the students. And having seen Ethiopian culture, but growing up in Silicon Valley, what do you consider the biggest contrast?
I feel like the biggest contrast is, of course, there's a large cultural difference, and the people look different.
Yes.
But I feel like the biggest contrast for me is that when I'm there, I'm seen as an American, and then when I'm here, I'm seen as second class or as somebody as something else, an African American, Ethiopian. So I'm always caught in between the two. So it's a lot of identity issues, because growing up, I went to a private school, and I found that I was the only African American person, not just Ethiopian, but African American person on the entire campus of a K-8 school. Everybody else was, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Caucasian, etc. So it was very clear to me at a young age that I was different. So when I did end up going to Ethiopia in 3rd grade, I instantly felt like I was at home. So I feel like that was the biggest contrast.
Yes.
The welcoming feeling, yeah.
A wonderful, warm, welcoming feeling in that way. I mentioned that you have such impressive credits. You work with the NAACP. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
So I started into the NAACP in my 8th grade year. I just started as a member. I was really interested in civil rights issues. I just started to get into it. And by my sophomore year, I became the chapter president and the education chair for the California and Hawaii Youth and College Division.
A lot of times people think of the NAACP as a historic organization, and sometimes that translates to them thinking about it as older generation. So for a youth who is a leader, what do you see as the organization's most vital role, and why should other teens become involved?
I feel like as youth, we should grasp every opportunity that's given to us. And one of the very amazing and unique things about NAACP is that they reach out and give a lot of opportunities to their youth. It's one of the only nonprofit large organizations that have youth on their board, the national board, So me being in NAACP has given me so much opportunity, because it has taken me from just being, a young lady who had something to say, who was upset about something, to the NAACP San Jose president who must be listened to. It kind of gives you a platform and a little bit more ethos.
Right.
I just took AP Lang this year, so ethos. So, you know, I think like for youth, that's just for my journey. Of course, there are other ways to become successful, but I feel like that was one of the things that allowed me to be the most flexible and do what I really wanted to.
Yes, and you're doing an internship at Stanford. You
Yeah.
did one for the summer, so.
So this summer, between June and August, middle of August before school starts, I'm doing an internship at Stanford University's Clayman Institute, which is a gender research institute. So one of the projects that I'm working on is online feminism and overall, what is social media's influence? So, you know, because as a young person, I get most of my news from Twitter.
Yes.
So, you know,
and you tweet a lot too. Yes, you have a lot of followers.
I follow lots of news sources, and I follow other people, and I kind of like get a grasp. So it was kind of interesting to find out that social media still hasn't become a replacement. But that's just going into my research. But, you know,
But for
that's
traditional media in that way.
Yeah.
And when you get your news from Twitter, then do you tend to go and get the comprehensive articles, or do you feel like I've got a little bit and I'm good to go?
I kind of read the small blurb that I follow CNN, BBC Africa, and etc. And I read the small blurbs, and if I find it interesting enough, I'll click the link and I'll read the whole story. But if it's, you know,
right.
I'll kind of just retweet, share it with somebody. But yeah, I think the most interesting thing that I'm learning from Stanford are the issues that women face in the workplace, in school, and a lot of the time, the things that I could relate to were the most interesting actually, because what I learned is that like my journey is not simply unique to me, but it is unique to people like me. So that was the most interesting and fascinating thing that I found, and it's kind of helping me see myself as a part of a community rather than just Helen Casa trying to figure life out.
Right. Well, one of the things about Helen Casa trying to figure life out is that you're inspirational and you have an ebullient spirit. I know that your parents are very much involved in your life and have instilled great values. What advice would you give some of your peers who find it challenging or maybe don't respect authority in that way?
I would say that your parents have the best intentions for you, and I don't know, I just kind of grew up in a place where my parents always wanted to know what I thought and respected me as a person and not just as their child that had to listen. So I kind of feel like in my case, it's not really an authoritative figure, it's more of like an older sister and older brother, because I am an only child, to guide me, because they want me to be able to communicate with them so they can stop me before anything bad happens.
I know, as an only child as well, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a unique relationship with your parents in that way. And I know right now the whole world is open to you in terms of career, but is there one thing in particular that you're looking at? I think we talked about you're still trying to find your way in terms of what you want to do.
As of now, I know that I'm passionate about every aspect of social justice, including water conservation and food supply, going all the way to race and sexism and etc. But I don't know which career path I'm going to go into. I just know that those are what I'm interested in and those are the things that I care about.
Yes, well, as I said, you're an inspiration. We'll put up your Twitter contact information there, as well as how to reach Helen, and look for her signature to become even bolder in our valley and beyond. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for joining us for Signature Silicon Valley. I'm Janice Edwards. That's our show. We want to invite you to join us next time, and please continue to celebrate all that is rich and wonderful in our Silicon Valley.